Today, we're going to look at a missionary's relationship to sending churches. And what we're going to do is we're going to look at two dimensions of relationships that can help explain how missionaries and sending churches relate to each other. One dimension is going to be called the communal dimension, and another dimension is going to be called the exchange dimension. I want to start off by imagining a missionary couple, Joshua and Ashley. Now, these are not real missionaries. They're just a type of an image, an illustration of missionaries. And Joshua and Ashley are off to Central Asia. They are going with a church planting mission, and they are excited to represent Christ and his church, bringing the gospel to a land that has very few evangelical Christians. However, once they're appointed as missionaries and they have to start raising prayer support and financial support, they're a little confused about how to do this. Working with individuals and getting support from individuals seems okay, but this question about what to do with churches, they're not too at ease with them. One of the reasons they're not too at ease is they don't know what the expectations are from the churches. Well, what I want to do is I want to look at this typology of relationships that will help people like Joshua and Ashley, missionaries who are developing relationships with churches who might support them, who already have relationships with supporting churches. I want to use this typology of relationships to make sense out of the concerns that both Joshua and Ashley have and that their supporting churches might have. And so these two types of relationships are called communal relationships and exchange relationships. Now, what do I mean by these? Communal relationships are relationships where people respond to each other's needs non-contingently. That means without condition. For example, parents of a young baby will do anything for the young baby. They are not going to wait for the baby to respond in kind and do something for the parents. No, the parents are going to feed the baby when the baby needs to eat. They're going to change the baby when the baby needs to be changed, regardless of what the baby can provide for them. And so that's the parents are responding to the baby's need non-contingently, and this is called a communal relationship. Now, this also happens when two people are in love and they see each other, they get to know each other, they fall in love. They'll do anything for each other. They don't keep track of how much they've provided each other. They just want to respond to any need that they can find in the other person's life. A third example of a communal relationship is God's love for humans. God loves us unconditionally. This is the very nature of God's agape love for people. And humans, hopefully, will respond in kind to God, but we know that we love Him because He first loved us. So in these communal relationships, no one really keeps track of responses. You just want to love and give to the other person to respond to their needs. Now, in missionary relationships with churches, this would be ideal, but realistically, that's probably not going to happen. It's not possible because of limited resources. Most churches would love to support missionaries 100%, but they don't have the resources to do it. Most missionaries would love to be available continually to help their churches, but you can't really commute between Central Asia and a North American church to respond to someone's need. So communal relationships really aren't very realistic in a church and missionary relationship. On the other hand, a more realistic type of expectation, a more realistic type of relationship to have is what's known as an exchange relationship. And in exchange relationships, there's an expectation that both parties provide each other comparable benefits, and that even though there's costs involved being involved in the relationship, there's benefits, and that these benefits are what make the relationship worthwhile. Now, in an exchange relationship, if the two parties don't keep benefiting each other, if they don't exchange positive experiences, it's most likely that the relationship will not continue, or at the very least, it'll change. So let's look at what this means for Joshua and Ashley to be in an exchange relationship with the church. What are the benefits for Joshua and Ashley? First of all, there's financial support. There's also prayer support. And then there's also emotional support. The financial support is what enables them to physically leave North America to start their church planting ministry in Central Africa. The prayer support is the spiritual side of that, where jointly they depend on God to providing the spiritual forces and resources necessary to carry on that relationship. But also the local church also provides Joshua and Ashley with emotional support. Perhaps people will write the church. Perhaps they'll get church. Joshua and Ashley will receive the church newsletters reminding them of culturally familiar things that mean an awful lot to them in difficult situations. Perhaps the church will send over supporters, so that and there'll be friendships that develop actually in Central Asia when people come to visit them. All these forms of emotional support. Now, in the church also benefits from Joshua and Ashley. First of all, the church wants to proclaim the gospel, and Joshua and Ashley will be their missionaries to do exactly that. And by God's grace, they will plant a church, which is exactly what the supporting church desires. Besides these direct goals of proclaiming the gospel and planting a church, there's other benefits that Joshua and Ashley also provide the church. One is Joshua and Ashley will be a continual representation of the evidence of the universal truth of the gospel. What's true in North America is equally true concerning the gospel in Central Asia. Now, there's a few other things that they might provide also. Perhaps Joshua and Ashley will provide short-term ministry opportunities for the youth group. Perhaps one summer the youth pastor will bring over a pack of high schoolers, and it'll be very beneficial for the church in that way. Another possibility is that Joshua and Ashley, as many missionaries have found out, they become a sort of model Christian family. Their family portrait is posted in a room in the church. Postcards with their family portrait are distributed to people. They're the only families that get invited onto the stage regularly when they come to church. They kind of become a model of what a Christian family should be, which provides a benefit for the church. Now let's look at some principles that have been empirically confirmed through research on what we can expect to happen in exchange relationships. Now these principles have been tested out in romantic relationships, in organizational relationships, and in a number of different types of relationships, and they generally model what one can expect. Now, every relationship is different, but they provide general principles about what you can expect. The first principle is that the approximate value of a relationship can be calculated using a cost-benefit analysis. The value of the relationship to one of the parties is equal to the benefits that they receive minus the cost involved. So a church might say, what are the benefits that we receive from Joshua and Ashley? Oh, they're proclaiming the gospel. They're planting a church. They're modeling a Christian family life for us. What are the costs involved? The costs involved are there's got to support them financially. We've got to give them some time in front of the audience. There's administrative paperwork. And so this first principle says that if the benefits are greater than the costs, it'll be a valuable relationship to the church. Now this means that Joshua and Ashley need to provide as many benefits possible for the church if they want to enter into and maintain this relationship. They need to do as many things as they can to give value to this relationship. A second principle concerning exchange relationships is that the satisfaction derived from a relationship depends on the expectations on each of the parties. So we can say that satisfaction equals, first of all, the benefits minus the cost, so how much the value of the relationship is, minus the expectations. If the church has lots and lots of expectations for Joshua and Ashley, and they're not fulfilling them, and the benefits just kind of outweigh the costs a little bit, the church isn't going to be very satisfied with the relationship. So what this means is that Joshua and Ashley need to learn and to meet the expectation of each of their churches. What are their churches expecting of them? Are they expecting them to how often are they supposed to communicate? What are they supposed to do during home assignment? Who are they supposed to visit? Who are they supposed to stay with? What are the expectations of the pastor? What are the expectations of the mission committee members? What are the expectations of the different small group leaders that they interact with? Joshua and Ashley need to find out what these are to make the relationship satisfying for the church. A third principle is that if there are alternatives available to a party, these alternatives influence their level of commitment. And in fact, the commitment can look at like the difference between the satisfaction and the value of the alternatives. Now, let's look at the illustration of maybe how teenage guy-girl relationships. And I imagine some of you have lots of teenagers. Perhaps you yourself were never a teenager, but you might have children who were teenagers. If there's a guy and a girl that are going together, but the guy notices that there's an alternative girl who has a lot of value, his level of commitment might go down. So even though he might be satisfied with the girl that he's dating, if the value of the alternatives is pretty high, the commitment level is going to go down. In contrast, if there are no other alternatives, there's no other girl that's even close to liking him, he's going to stay committed to the girl that he's presently dated, even if the satisfaction level is not very high, because he doesn't have other alternatives. Now, this can be the same way in relationships between churches and missionaries. Now, this can actually be a bad news for Joshua and Ashley, because churches have a lot more alternatives than Joshua and Ashley do. It might take several years for Joshua and Ashley to get churches to support them so that they can go overseas. So they are extremely dependent on these churches, and it's very, very hard for them to get other new churches to support them. In contrast, churches might have missionaries phoning them every week, several times a week, seeking support. So the churches have lots and lots of alternatives to Joshua and Ashley. So if the satisfaction goes down, if Joshua and Ashley pass through a difficult time, like all missionaries do, the church might not be too satisfied with what they're doing. The church's commitment level, if they've got a lot of alternatives, could go down quite low. However, there's a better model, empirical studies have shown that the level of commitment also depends on what we can call investments. Investments are resources that would be lost if the relationship ended. That would be memories being together, maybe the status that comes from being in a relationship, knowledge from each other, past experiences, warmth and communion that they've developed over the years. You could include also the financial investment, visits that have been made by each party to the other. The more people invest into a relationship, the higher the commitment level goes. So in this more complete model, this model known as the investment model of commitments, commitment is equal to not just satisfaction minus the values of alternatives, but satisfaction plus the investments minus the value of alternatives. And this means that commitment will be high if lots and lots of investments have been made over the weeks and months and years that the church and the missionaries have known each other. Even if there's better alternatives, the commitment will exist. And perhaps most importantly, even if Joshua and Ashley pass through really difficult times, if they go through trials that are incredibly discouraging and they're seeing no fruit at all, if they are struggling with various issues, if they've invested into the relationship with the churches will stick with them during these difficult times, which, as we see from the life of Paul and every other missionary, definitely occur. So let's summarize by going over several applications. First of all, Joshua and Ashley should provide as many benefits to the church as possible, to both their supporting and potentially supporting churches, to provide value. They need to demonstrate that they can do the job, that they have a vision, that they're going to accomplish something that the church cares about. And when they come back to visit them, they need to report on what they've done, how the vision is accomplishing, and how the ministry will evolve in the future. Secondly, they've got to learn and meet the church's expectations in order to increase the church's satisfaction. They need to learn what the missions committee, the pastoral staff, the gatekeepers, the decision makers, what they want, and they need to respond and meet those expectations so that they can be a source of satisfaction rather than distress for the churches that are supporting them. And thirdly, they need to continually increase investments into their relationships with the churches to increase commitment so that even when the most difficult times come, the churches will stick with them, they'll stick with their churches, and they can continue to provide benefits for one another.